Welcome to the Outer Realms with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
You.
Let's start this again.
There it is.
Now that the mic is actually on. Welcome. That doesn't happen, but I'm having a day. Anyway, welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3, 107.7 FM in New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since day one, which is probably about 5 years here. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Also, thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for the contribution of his voice in his music for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Thank you also to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre, but does phenomenal commission pieces of all sorts. So tonight is really special for us because we're welcoming back this a very special friend and just an awesome human, as I like to say. Yeah. People are totally awesome. They're an awesome human. And she is Laura DiDio, total fan favorite. And she is just wonderful. She, for those who don't know, she is an award-winning journalist, and she is a lady who literally broke the Amityville Horror story. So we're going to go into the Wayback Machine a little bit, and you're going to actually get things pretty straight. There's no reason for her to go into any specific direction. She did, partake in the evening of the famous seance that we heard. She's had some experiences, while other times not. So she's basically going to tell it like it is, and that's the way we want it. No fanfare, just good experiences. So here we go. We're going to wait for her to come on in. So hi. Oh, hi, Jackie. Well, very nice. Very nice. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to see you here.
Nice. I just want to put up a reminder if I can.
Yeah, of course. I'm just gonna flash comments. So you go ahead.
Okay. Just because I don't want to interfere with her time once she comes on.
Oh yeah, no problem.
I mentioned the giveaway yesterday by CC Champagne, the book That Moment. It could be yours. You can enter to win it. We're doing a draw. The rules are you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then go over to our Facebook channel, which most of you are there anyways, and put done in the comments so I can put your name down. And I have a couple names, and then I'm going to pick them out of this magic vase and next week after the guests have gone.
Hey, and all channels are working. Last night we didn't have two of the Facebook pages, being one of our own, working. So that could be why you weren't able to post there. But from everything I'm seeing now, it is up, it is running, so you can come up even on this post. Does that work okay, or do you want them somewhere specific?
No, I need them to post on the post where the book is. You'll see a photograph.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay.
This way I have all the names in the same spot. I will write your names down, put them in the beautiful vase, the gorgeous Murano vase, and it's magic, and we'll just and it's witchy season, and we'll go from there. And then we will announce the winner, and I'll take care of it. I'll have to get you to contact me after that so I can get your information and I'll send it out to you.
Sounds easy enough.
Yeah. Perfect timing in the
enough.
fall when everybody's feeling a little bit melancholy, and this book is very uplifting.
Oh gosh, yes, everything you have raved about it. So I know whoever
Yeah.
gets their hands on it are going to be thrilled. Hi, Kathy.
Gosh, I can't tell you
So
how
it's
many of these.
going to be awesome. But I'm really looking forward to this because Amityville Horror, I think, has become pretty much a household name for any horror or paranormal enthusiasts. So
Yeah, unless you're 20 years old. Sorry.
I can't even.
No, I'm serious. I couldn't believe it. I spoke to a 20. She's like, "What? Who?" I'm like,
I know. Here it is.
I love her. She's probably watching right now.
Yeah.
Hi, Robbie. Boston, favorite city. Hi, Heidi. Hi,
Well,
Carrie.
Our guest of honor is here. So
Yay.
we'll bring her on. Oh,
hello. How are you, Bella?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're kidding me? I could have you like every week. I'd be fine.
I know.
I'd be so happy. Seriously. Sorry, my bangs are doing a thing here. I'd be so happy talking to you. I could pick your ear for days.
No, I love it. I love it. It's so great to have you back. I have really been looking forward to it. And you know, you are a fan favorite. The archives did really great. And of course, you were one of our earlier guests, and our numbers have probably quadrupled since then. So we are, we're going to have a whole pile of other new listeners. We have people on Roku TV as well, and Rumble and other platforms that we weren't on before. So I was hoping that we could kind of just, recreate the show in a way. And of course, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff in between, and the chat room will be really active, because it seems that every now and then you have these famous cases or stories that resurface again. And I think we're having a little bit of that resurgence once again. So I thought this would be perfect. And we're coming on to Spooky Month, which of course is going to be, just in time for a nice slam dunk. So anyway, you were the reporter, the journalist who broke this story. Where would you like to start, my dear? The stage is yours.
Well, where would you like me to start? I think it's interesting that you say that there's a resurgence in Amityville. In fact, it's been surging since 2000. There was a lull for a while. Then all of a sudden we got documentaries. Now we have all the podcasts, the streaming platforms, and you have to feed the content monster. It's insatiable. So there's been a spate, just an ongoing spate of documentaries. I mean, when you think that the Travel Channel, for example, is 80% now all paranormal.
I know, it's crazy.
And what that is. But I think when you look at Amityville historically, it was a moment in time. And again, so to frame it, what made this stand out? I don't think it's something like you can't predict. It's like predicting how a jury will go, or how an election will go. But in this case, when you look back to the 70s, when this happened, the Defeo murders in December of 1975, and then the Lutzes in 74, a year later, the house, which had been standing vacant for a year, was purchased by Kathy and George Lutz, and they moved in with their 3 children. They're out in a month, in January of 1976. Next thing you know, they had contacted Butch or Ronald Defeo Jr.'s lawyer and said, did he ever say if anything spooky or unusual went on there? So a press conference was held in William Weber, who had been Ronald DeFeo Jr.'s defense attorney. And it blew up in the local media then. But local media in 1976 was primitive, okay? You didn't have cable. You didn't have streaming. You didn't have mobile phones. You did not have the internet. You still had rotary dial phones, push button phones, and call waiting, call forwarding, three-way calling. That was exotic. You had
That's true.
phone booths.
It wasn't even on your mind.
Yes,
No,
I don't think it was created yet. Yeah.
But when you look at that situation, framing it, 1974, the end of 74, 75, 76, the murders happened, then the paranormal activity experienced allegedly, because you can't prove paranormal activity unless it's happening to you, you know, and
pretty much.
that was coming on the heels of The Exorcist, which is still the standard by which everything else is judged. Horror movies, exorcism. I mean, that today is still it's still a spooky movie. People don't realize it because then you didn't, you weren't watching movies on your mobile phone or tablets. For those things, okay? People you went to the theater, you watched it, and people who were atheists, were not churchgoers, who were, disbelievers, cynics, what have you, they were coming out of that movie. And I remember, you read stories about people sleeping with the lights on.
Yes.
Hanging rosary beads, crucifixes off their beds. So when you think about it, what William Weber, who had been a very, very capable defense attorney on Long Island, and Butch DeFeo had gone through three court-appointed defense attorneys, and I think his family had, it's probably two court-appointed defense attorneys and one attorney that his family, his grandparents had hired for him. And he was getting into fights with them. So then along comes William Weber, the next guy in there, and he was pretty scrappy. He did more in those first few days than everybody else had done in the months leading up to the trial. And he's the P.T. Barnum in this story, which is he grasped the potential for marketing and fashioning and presenting Ronald DeFeo Jr. as somebody who might have been possessed.
It fits. That
odd things had happened. And of course, he always had an uphill battle.
Right, for sure.
He did not have a sympathetic client.
No.
If you go back, if you jump forward a couple of decades to the Menendez brothers, even with the abuse that they suffered at the hands of their father, which was well documented and supported by their relatives, they had a hard time explaining, what about their mother? How could you chase your mother around the house and kill her?
True. That's true. And your siblings in this case.
I don't think she was supposed to be there with her.
I don't know. I mean, it was the older brother.
Yeah, Eric.
Lyle was.
Oh, Lyle
was driving that. He was the one who concocted that thing, and the younger brother went along with him. But
Eric was the follower. Okay,
so
I remember
in that case, it was iffy because and there was no supernatural thing. I have to say, I was a crime reporter, police reporter, but I also did things on the paranormal. But if we were doing a Venn diagram, the point of intersection amongst the cases that were criminal cases, murders, things like this, that intersected with the paranormal was probably 5 to 10%. And in those days, you didn't talk about it. But what William Weber did was a lot of self-aggrandizement, a la P.T. Barnum, or in this case, think any of the shock jocks, Howard Stern, or, whatever you do these days, the Kardashians, to promote themselves. That's what he was doing. And that would have been a landmark case on appeal, which is why he embraced the Lutzes, which was, let's see if we can say the devil made me do it defense.
Right.
And of course, with Ronnie Defeo Jr., I was asked on one documentary that I did, what was he like? And I said, he was a suburban punk. Basically, he was not overly intelligent. He was cunning. He in today's vernacular, you would say he was entitled.
Right.
His parents, unfortunately, didn't spare the rod, but they also spoiled this man child.
Right.
So he was running around town. He always had money in his pockets. The parents bought him cars, boats, guns. Big mistake, as we know. So he had plenty of money to buy friends, girlfriends, and he was indulging in all of his habits. Right. And the family, the Defeo family, people say, what were they like? Well, again, go back to the 70s, where corporal punishment, loud behavior, a little crass stuff. You look at that house, which is so gorgeous, and it's like watching, if you go to the classic TV channels, look at the Brady Bunch, Bewitched, any of those things, what was middle to upper middle class in those days looks kitschy and sort of cheap. For Micah, for Micah, which all of our parents, our grandparents had, now has given way to granite, those things. So they had this big house, swimming pool, but they had the shag carpeting, and that was in those days, but they had a finished basement. Ronald Defeo had everything he could have.
Yeah, he lacked
wanted.
for nothing.
So then you get this combination. Okay, now this is also happening on the heels of The Exorcist. It's in the New York metropolitan tri-state area, which is the communications capital of the world. The Lutzes do this press conference where they don't say a lot, just that unseen forces. They never said demonic, but something drove them from the house. And in fact, they were pretty coy about it. And the local newspapers, Newsday, the New York Post, the New York Daily News, and the local TV channels, covered it a bit. But believe it or not, it took the Channel 5 reporting to really get it into New York and the public's consciousness, because before that, it was a local story. And right after the Lutzes did that interview, the press conference, next thing you know, they go underground. Nobody can reach them because they weren't at the house. Now, again, when I say underground, it's relative. Today, the press would be tracking them down. They would be bothering the kids at school. They would be, on TikTok.
It's a different world.
Yeah, they have less accessibility at that time.
Yes. But here they could really sort of hide out. They were actually, they went to live with Kathy's mother in her very modest, 3 bedroom bungalow ranch house. So they could avoid some of that. But behind the scenes, your friend, our friend there, William Weber, and he crossed the line. He didn't just cross the line. He was crossing time zones and continents.
Wow.
In terms of
yeah.
Well, in terms of conflict of interest, because he likes to, I'm sure you've all heard the story, or many people have, that he sat with the Lutzes over a few bottles of wine and cooked up this plan. Let's put the house into a trust. We can get a couple of books, a few movies out of this easily, and we can split the profits. I heard the tapes, but it was actually Weber's idea. And in listening to it, and the Lutzes played me the tapes, and they said, "Oh, we're really ashamed of this, that we did this." And I'll never forget listening to the tapes. One of the things that I can still hear it in my mind's eye, was George Lutz telling William Weber, "Okay, but I don't want the children involved. They have no part in this." And I remember William Weber saying, "Oh, the children, of course. Yeah, God bless them. We'll keep them out of it."
No integrity, basically.
No.
He would have fit into this time.
But he was a defense attorney. Now he's getting in bed with these other people, and the idea was still there in his head that he and his law partner, Bernie Burton, were in fact going to do an appeal for Ronnie on the grounds of possession, or the devil made him do it. So it was dicey both ways, because as we see when you jump forward in it. So at some point behind the scenes, so everybody was calling Weber, who was acting as the de facto PR person representing the Lutzes. And I was one of those people who was calling and calling and calling. And Weber had a very, I would say, sophisticated PR plan and campaign in place, which was, he had been contacted by Channel 7 Eyewitness News, and they had gotten together a group of Wiccans, white witches, who were going to go in and exorcise the house. He had contacted Stephen Kaplan, a self-styled vampirologist. And I remember talking to Stephen Kaplan on the phone at the time, and he was very, very animated and telling me, oh, he couldn't wait to get in there. And because he thought, wow, this could really be such an incredible haunting. And as we know, he changed his tune, and became a debunker. But when I talked to William Weber, he says, well, Channel 5 can come in too. So you can imagine if this had unfolded the way Weber had planned, he would have had the whole media there.
It'd have been a circus, more so.
So he wanted the next exorcist.
Yes, but then all of a sudden it goes, but with a cast of thousands there to film everything.
Right.
So all of a sudden it goes silent with the Lutzes. Somewhere behind the scenes, they broke off contact with William Weber. There was a power struggle going on there because George Lutz was always going to be controlling, and he was very high strong, George.
Right. Well, ex-military, right? So.
Well, it was like tap dancing around with nitroglycerin in your hand, TNT. He could explode at any time. So I was trying to call them, and what I did was I got the idea, why don't I just call his office? The William H. Parry Surveying Company, which had been in his family for several generations. I left a message with one of his employees, explained who I was, and I said, I have been investigating paranormal things, and I know a lot of the folks in the business, like Hans Holzer, Ed and Lorraine Warren, several other notable psychics who had worked with police before.
Mm-hmm.
This should be done right. It shouldn't be a circus. So here's my number. Here's my home. Here's the private number at the station where he can call me. And the next thing you know, I came back and he had called. There was a message. And of course, the other people on the assignment desk at Channel 5 were saying, oh, talk to us, talk to us. No, I'm only going to talk to her. Why he made that call, I don't know. He didn't know me or anything about me. And certainly at the time, I'm pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I called him back. We were chatting. I gave him the same, I don't want to call it a spiel, but I guess it was a spiel. I did genuinely want to help them, but I also wanted to get the story. So my I had a lot of altruism. Altruism and ambition were at work there side by side. And as it turned out, he said to me, this was on a Friday when I was speaking to him, he says, could you meet Kathy and I tomorrow so we can talk at length? And I said, sure. Yeah, come out to my office. I said, okay. I didn't tell anybody at Channel 5 because I said to myself, okay, I am just, a news assistant, a lowly news assistant, runt, factotum, gopher. It's better not to tell them, because if I tell them I'm going and it all goes south, I could lose my job. Remember, in that time, journalism was also riding high before the internet.
Yes.
And Woodward and Bernstein, after all of Watergate and Nixon's resignation, everybody wanted to be a journalist. So I went out, I met with them. I had my tape recorder. He had a tape recorder. We sat there in his office with he and Kathy for 5.5 hours.
Wow.
Talking. Trying to get them to nail down, if you will, what had happened exactly. Kathy would lean forward and she would, talk so softly, you would have to strain to hear her. And she spoke very hauntingly, haltingly. And you felt that she was really haunted by this.
Mm-hmm.
George, or Lee, as people called him, he was wired. He was a hyper person. You felt like it was a tensile wire and he could snap at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I attributed that to what they had been through in 28 days. The framework of their story was that they moved in. This was their dream house, but almost immediately things started to happen. Now, for any of your listeners who are out there who are believers, when you're talking about possession, infestation is the first thing that happens. If you look at the character played by Linda Blair in the Exorcist movie, Little Reagan, who's 12 years old, she had the friend who was Mr. Howdy.
Mm-hmm.
And she was playing with the Ouija board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Certainly the Lutz children were not playing with a Ouija board.
Mm-hmm.
But what the Lutzes described to me was, well, at first things seemed to be fine, but these little things would start happening. They talked about collection of flies all over the place, not just a couple of flies, but flies all over.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Kathy said that she felt very sort of lackadaisical. She didn't really want to do anything. George, on the other hand, from a physical standpoint, his personal hygiene went down the tubes. He didn't want to shower. He could never get warm. He was building big fire, in the fireplace. And it wasn't really that cold at the time.
Mm.
You know, that December, you know, it was in the 30s, but nothing where
Right.
he shouldn't be able to.
Unmanageable. Right.
Yeah. Then
Right.
they said that they were undergoing personality transformation. Like they woke the kids up in the middle of the house, in the middle of the night to, and run, you know, they were behaving like drill sergeants towards the kids, making them walk around. The kids
Right.
themselves, they said their friends didn't want to stay on the property. Kathy's brother Jimmy was getting married, and he was paying for the wedding reception and the hall. He had cash with him. The cash disappeared.
So that is true story.
Yes, Kathy's one of her aunts was a nun, and she came into the house, and she became physically ill and had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So they were getting George was getting very argumentative, short-tempered. He didn't want to leave the house and go to the office. So there were all these things happening. Then they said that they saw, and this part is exaggerated on George's part. He said he went out to the boathouse there and he saw what he called poltergeist puke, green slime. But it was more like mold, I'm sure.
Yeah. Ghostbusters wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had also talked about that the hinges were ripped off the door.
Mm-hmm.
We did not see any evidence of that, nor could we find any evidence that there had been a repair job.
Or the windows.
Or the
He
windows.
also stated the windows.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I did see, the windows upstairs on the 3rd floor, because the boys were in Butch DeFeo's old room.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those quarter deck windows, the eyes.
Yes.
Which have since been replaced. I guess Danny was trying to open the window, and he was opening the window and it had slammed shut on him. Mm-hmm. Now, windows in those days, the old windows actually had leaded iron weights.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if that snapped, yeah, you couldn't get it up. But I did see his hand, and it was all, bruised still. This is weeks after. He still had the remnants of the bruise and what have you. Then Missy, the youngest, who was 5, the girl, she, of course, had the imaginary playmate, Jody.
Jody, yeah.
And people talk about Jody being a pig, but what Missy had told me at the time, and what she told Kathy and George, was that, well, Jody could be anything he wanted to be.
Ugh.
Which makes sense.
Change shapes. Yeah. And to that point, George claimed that there were glowing red eyes looking in at him on the 3rd floor window.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have no idea if that's true. The 2 boys, Chris and Danny, sharing a bedroom, one night they said that they saw this black form.
Mm-hmm.
Like a shadow?
Yeah. I mean, it was some sort of entity. Certainly they knew it was otherworldly. They probably would have called it a ghost, but it was this sort of black, dark shape coming towards them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were scared about that. Danny also, and by the way, the boys, years later, the 2 boys, Danny and Chris, have, had their ups and downs with George. Mm-hmm. Danny especially loathed him. And in the My Amityville Horror documentary, he pulls no punches, literally, and said he tried to hit him over the head. He wanted to kill him as a kid. He just did not like him. Mm-hmm. Chris has been back and forth and on that, but neither of those 2 who were 9 and 7 at the time.
Right.
And now they're middle-aged men. Neither of them has ever recanted and said, okay, this was all a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
No.
In fact, driving in the car out on Long Island with Danny and talking to him, he said, you know, they went through a lot because nobody would believe them.
That's tough.
He says,
It was that time too, though. Right?
Yes. But they were ridiculed at school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they moved into a home that there was all these murders.
Yes. By the way, it's nothing compared to what would happen to them if this were going on today.
Right.
You could just see the bullying, the pranks. So in that sense, they were lucky, but they were still very, very well aware of what was going on. I don't think that they could imagine the horror of the actual murders, although interestingly, because they were in what had been Ronald DeFeo's bedroom, there was still ammunition from his guns there in the closet, which is something people don't get.
No.
And the other thing that's always struck me as odd, because I'm sure you've heard stories, whenever you have a violent murder, especially involving children or soldiers on a battlefield, many of those spirits are confused.
Yes.
Like, what happened to me?
Yeah, they're stuck.
At the time, though, and one would expect that because the Defeo children, you had Dawn, she was 18. So she was legally an adult, but let's face it, at 18, you have
Sure. Yes.
Feet in both worlds. I don't think she was fully matured as a woman, but she was an adult. Allison was 13. Mark and John were 12 and 9. Nobody ever suggested at the time that it was the ghost of the Defeo children or the Defeos themselves.
That's a tough one because
who was haunting. What the Lutzes claimed from the get-go was that it was unseen forces. They also claimed that they levitated off their bed at night. Kathy looked in the mirror one day, and what was staring back at her was the face of an old hag. And she was 29 at the time. Very beautiful woman.
See, I have to say, when you say unseen forces and people are levitating, it takes a lot of energy for a spirit to move things on an average. Like it would take a lot of strength. It makes me wonder if they would have been able to do something like that. My thoughts would be that something maybe a little bit more malevolent would come in, perhaps to feed off of, because it happens a lot in situations like that. You have these malevolent things that come in to feed off the energy of the spirits that are grounded. Just a thought.
Well, that's true. But as a reporter coming in there, now there was no doubt that Channel 5 was going to do the story.
Yes.
Whether or not it was going to be the news director, Mark Monsky, all he could see was ratings. And he knew people were going to tune in. As far as a television station goes, we couldn't lose. This wasn't Geraldo Rivera opening up Al Capone's vault and finding nothing.
Yes.
No, I mean, if nothing happened, we could basically say, hey, nothing happened. It's all a hoax. See?
Right.
Trick or treat. If something happened, we'd get it on camera.
It's a win-win.
It's obviously a win-win.
Yes.
People were going to tune in, and they did.
Yes.
But with George, you have to wonder. And then, of course, they were also living with a lot of what was the DeFeo's furniture.
Yeah.
Because
that's a big one.
the DeFeo and Briganti families, they didn't want any part of it.
No, not when their family members were murdered. No.
Michael Briganti Sr., okay, Louise's father, was distraught. I mean, it was mayhem that night. So if you go back to the time of the murders, you can see why people were so eager to embrace this. You've got this beautiful house, upscale community. You've got a family of husband, wife, 5 kids. There were ties to organized crime on both sides of the family. And again, in the 70s and 80s, you had the mafia at its height. People were getting, when you had the mob wars.
Oh, you had the 5 families. Yeah, yes. They were prevalent then.
But at the same time, the old style Italian mafia kept a lot of that away from the family. The family was sacred. So Michael Briganti Sr., the night of the murders, after the bodies had been found, and the cops were all over that place, he wanted to get into the house. And they wouldn't let him. He says, I want to kiss my daughter, my grandbabies. He was truly, truly upset. And at the trial, they knew pretty much what the score was. But the Briganti and DeFeo families, they suspected Ronnie right away. But they closed ranks. And essentially were supporting him to the point where they had even hired a private investigator to try and substantiate Ronnie's story. The problem is he was spinning so many stories, and it was actually coming to naught. But they would deal with him. And one thing that happened, and that I also found as a reporter, it's macabre, but it's comedic at the same time.
Right.
The Suffolk County Police and Homicide, who caught the case, they got wind of the fact that the U.S. District Courts over in Brooklyn had a wiretap on the Briganti Carl Buick dealership. Okay, so one's the feds, the other's local, and they were not necessarily going to be buddy-buddy to cooperate. But the folks out in Amityville said, hey, listen, they managed to get the feds to say, the RICO squad, okay, we want to hear the tapes, what's on it. We're not trying to interfere with anything that you're investigating with that. We only want to know what was going on with respect to Ronald Jr. Butch.
Did they get that access?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had my sources, and I heard those tapes as well. And I have to tell you, it was funny because, first of all, if anybody remembers the John Gotti stuff, he had his social club, and he was out there, with his flashy clothes and everything else. But all these wise guys, everybody's blabbing. They're talking freely.
Then, They thought they were untouchable. There was a generation. Well, I think that generation's come back, but anyways. Yeah.
Very, very indiscreet and indiscriminate blabbing.
Yeah. Well, that's why they called him the Dapper Don, because he was infamous for being out there.
Exactly. So in the case of Michael Briganti Sr., he testified at the trial. And by the way, Michael Briganti Sr., I should say, whatever he was involved in, we're not talking he was carrying a gun, executing people, nothing like that. He gave a very, very spirited accounting of himself during Butch's trial.
Mhm.
And he basically said, I'm a practicing Catholic. I take communion once a month. I go to confession.
He takes
Okay?
communion once a month. That's a practicing Catholic. At that time, didn't they go every morning?
No, not necessarily. But the point is, it was a much less secular society in those days.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, people went to mass.
Yeah.
You know, they went to services, you know, whether you were Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, etc. You went,
Yeah.
okay, and you supported it. So he was making the point that he was a God-fearing man.
Right.
But when you listen to those tapes, I don't know how much the feds were getting from the wiretap on any illegal activities that they were investigating him for, allegedly. But they got the whole dump. They hit the mother lode when it came to talking about Ronnie Jr. And some of it because it sounded like wise guys talking.
Mhm.
So some of Mr. Briganti's associates and relatives, they said, it was funny. They said, what are we going to do about the kid if he gets acquitted? He knows a lot about our business. That could be a
Wow.
real problem. And they said, so Ronnie was afraid of his grandfather.
Rightfully so.
Yes, and he said he was telling the cops, the Amityville police, that his grandfather had paid all the cops off, and he could get killed in prison. He could get poisoned in prison. All of these things. He was a real drama queen there, and of course, none of that came to pass. But listening to them talk, they knew he had done it. They said, and Michael Briganti had bought a lot of nice jewelry, apparently, for his daughter, Louise, and for the granddaughters. And there was money in that house. Allegedly, there might have been $200,000, $100,000.
Well, they owned a car dealership. That's not unusual.
In the Amityville house, not.
Yeah.
And they said, what happened to all the jewelry? They said, Butch must have taken it. They said, we know the cops didn't take it. So they were aware of those things. And they did, by the way.
Crazy.
There was a real spiritual and religious element to this case with the Defeos. Because as many people know, Ronnie Jr. and Big Ronnie, his father, did not get along. And they ended up having fisticuffs on the lawn. And next thing you know, one of them would get into the car, the other one would get into another car, and they'd go zooming down the block. And this was real eye-opening stuff for the neighbors. They were putting on quite a show.
Right.
They also
especially for that neighborhood.
Yes, they had also gotten into a fight in the basement.
Oh wow!
You know, again, fisticuffs, and the two younger boys, John and Mark, had their friends over, and they were hiding on the stairs, you know, peeping and saying, you know, watching this. And by the way, the other four Defeo kids were very well liked and very well respected in the neighborhood. They went to the local Catholic school. They were altar boys at mass. And the Baldwin brothers lived on the island near them, and they knew them.
Right.
So these kids were, the other four were well liked, well behaved, and popular.
Whitey Bulger was was an altar boy as well. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, I don't think Butch was, but in his mind,
No.
by the way, he had a certain code of honor. He was talking to the cops after his confession. His code of honor, he says, well, I never hit a nun.
If I could just interject here for a second, because you made a point that's going to come up later. You said that they would drive off in their cars, and of course it was a ruckus to the neighborhood, but yet that same neighborhood didn't hear the gunshots.
True. And that's, by the way, that is one of the big mysteries or question marks in this case, because well, where they were on Long Island, the houses are close together, but it's not like Queens or Brooklyn where they're 10 feet apart.
Yeah,
exactly. And plus they're right on the water. The Amityville River, or the creek as they called it, comes right up behind the house. And if you've got rock ledge or you've got water, the sound reverberates and echoes. It carries. You can hear that.
Yeah.
Well, the house on the other side of them, the Ireland family lived. If you come up the block and you're standing looking at the houses, the Ireland family's house was to the right, and there was a shared driveway there. The house on the left was unoccupied at the time. The only thing that was heard was there was a 15-year-old neighbor boy who was 2 houses away. His name was John Nemeth, and he, at about 3:15 in the morning, when the murders were occurring, Shaggy, the old English sheepdog, was tied outside and he was howling.
Mm-hmm.
And the next morning, that the neighbor boy went to, he's about 15, 16. He went to get past the house and he noticed that the lights were still on, as did a couple of other people in the neighborhood who knew the family. But recollections, as Queen Elizabeth II had said, may vary. And as time went on, many people began to change their stories, Amelia.
Yeah, of course. You find that with criminals too. Yeah.
Well, the next door neighbor, at first, they said they hadn't heard anything, but then all of a sudden Mrs. Ireland popped up and she's like, oh no, I heard the gunshots. She claimed to have heard something where, after the story blew up.
Mm-hmm.
But
he heard gunshots at 3:00 in the morning. You call the police. You don't just dismiss that.
Yeah, and understand, this is a .33 caliber Marlin rifle.
Yeah.
There was no silencer on it.
It's loud.
This thing was loud.
It's like lightning bolts.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a semi-automatic, but it was loud.
Mm-hmm.
He basically killed his parents 2 shots each, and then 1 shot for each of his 4 siblings.
There's something in that.
And those were kill shots. That was at close range. And make no mistake, this was a really bloody crime scene.
Oh, that blows big holes. But the 2 shots for the parents and the 1 shot for the children shows the respect for his siblings and not his parents.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he respected anything. By the way, for the record, after the police detective broke him and got him to confess and asked the question that everybody would ask, why'd you do it?
Yeah.
He says, I don't know. It all happened so fast. I just started shooting and I couldn't stop.
But he precisely gave the parents 2 shots each.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, well, the
bizarre.
father was starting to get up. And the other thing that nobody could understand, it's one of the big mysteries, and it's even in the book High Hopes,
Mhm.
where which was written by Gerard Sullivan and an editor, a Pulitzer Prize winning editor from New York Newsday, Harvey Aronson, that they couldn't, the last page in that book, High Hopes, which is all about the Defeo murders. And it's the best book out there on it. If anybody wants to find it, you have to go on eBay or Amazon or a library. He said, Gerard Sullivan said after the case was over, he often wondered especially about the Defeo children, because he had 2 teenage daughters of his own at the time, and why nobody woke up. Well, you can understand the way that house was, everybody but Dawn was on the second floor. So the parents' master bedroom was on the left side of the staircase. He went in, shot the father. The first shot went into the father's chest, and he must have, your body is going to react to getting blasted with a shotgun.
Yeah.
But that'll wake you up. The father started to rise. Then he hit him with another shot. I guess the mother,
In
she's
shock.
right next to the father.
Yeah.
She had to have heard something, but she didn't have time to react. Then they're face down. But that begs the question of why the sister Allison, who's 13 and right across the hall, and the 2 brothers who were sleeping in twin beds and sharing a bedroom, why none of them got up. Now,
That's the big question.
Yes, the one brother, by the way, had broken his leg and was like in a wheelchair or on crutches because of a football. He got hurt playing football. Now, I don't know about you, but if my brother was coming at me, I mean, you could hear something right across the hall. Anybody out there who has, you sleep with a spouse, a partner, you've got cats or a dog, when they get up and move.
Yeah.
You can't have the whole family who are sound sleepers.
That's right.
So even if Butch had threatened the siblings and said, don't move or get on your back, I can't imagine that they would do it, because now you've got a 9-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 13-year-old on the second floor. They've got to be scared.
Yes.
They
can't
want
mom and dad. Yeah.
Yeah, they would start crying. But he got in there, happened really fast. But how did they not wake up?
Did he cover his face? Sorry.
No.
Okay, so they knew what they were looking at. He never used a facial covering. He never pretended to be someone else where they would have such fear they were frozen.
No.
Wow.
Well, they were afraid of him and his temper.
Well, obviously,
to a certain extent, but those were close-up kill shots. And the girls, especially Allison and Dawn, were shot in the head and the face.
Wow, that's aggressive.
This was a bloody scene.
It's a language when they shoot in the face. Yeah.
There was brain matter. There were bone, fragments on the walls. Okay, and the bedclothes. And poor Dawn, apparently Butch did tell the detective when he was doing his confession, that Dawn had waked up and come out of her bedroom and said, "Is that you, Butch?" And he says, "Yeah, Dawn, everything's okay. Go back to bed." Again, that makes no sense to me.
She didn't hear anything, obviously.
No, he
to ask, is everything okay? Yeah.
Is that you, Butch?
Yes.
Now, if you hear bang, bang, bang in your house,
yes,
that wouldn't be my first reaction. Michelle, what would you say if you heard gunshots
I'd shoot.
I sure wouldn't be calling out. I'd be under the damn bedders looking for a way out. I would not be under the bed. But it just tells me that she heard him come in. She was hearing him, but she didn't hear the guns.
If somebody's shooting in your siblings and you're separated, your first instinct is to go to your siblings, especially if they're smaller, younger. Your instinct,
or to say,
yeah, are you okay? Where are you? Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
They hear gunshots.
Why are you shooting your gun off? But
yeah,
so it doesn't make sense after hearing that she would suddenly go back to bed.
Right.
And then probably just 5 minutes later, he's up in her bedroom.
Do we know if he's done that before? Where he's come in with a gun and threatened his dad and not followed through with it?
We know that he did. Now, this is also unbelievable. Okay. Another unbelievable thing to me about this case is that a year or, earlier, Butch had gotten one of his guns and he pointed it at the father.
Yeah.
And tried to shoot the father earlier.
This becomes normal. And are you okay thinking he's going to walk away from this?
So the father takes the gun away from him. Mm-hmm. The gun jammed. So big Ronnie Sr., all of a sudden he says, I dodged a bullet. The devil was after me and on my shoulder. I dodged a bullet. So Ronnie Sr. gets religion. And the whole family troops up to Canada to go to an oratory and, monastery, and they're making pilgrimages up there, and there's pictures of them looking very, very happy. And big Ronnie Sr. is sending money to these priests. Okay. Even when he's trying to figure out ways to screw over his father-in-law and skim money off because both Ronnie Jr., Butch, and his father were working for the Briganti Carl Buick dealership. And 2 weeks before the murders, the Defeo murders, Ronnie Jr. and was tasked. He was just a gopher at the place. They didn't give him any responsibility. He was not a car salesman. He was not a mechanic in the service department. They basically sent him to go pick up automotive parts or to run errands, go get food. Sometimes he joked about the fact that he could skip work and they weren't going to fire him. But this one day, about 2 weeks before the murders, he's tasked with making a bank deposit, $20,000. They send out Ronnie and another employee. They're gone for 3 hours. They come back and say, we were robbed. Now, knowing this kid's history as a drug addict, a ne'er-do-well, a layabout,
right?
He's going to be the first suspect. And he wasn't even subtle about. He essentially started spending money like the proverbial drunken sailor on shore leave, or somebody who's just hit the Vegas slot machines. And so the father knew something was up. So that was a possible motive for the murders, because the walls might have been closing in. But I don't even know if that shook Ronnie, aka Butch, at all. Because he was doing serious drugs.
Did they run toxicology that night?
On Ronnie, no, they didn't, because at first they thought he was a victim. He went running down to the local bar and said, help, something's wrong.
Yeah.
With my parents.
Small town.
And so he got a couple of the folks at the bar to come back with him. And that's when they discovered the dead bodies. And in fact, they didn't realize, they saw the parents and only a couple of the kids. They didn't realize there were two more. So then they called the police. The cops descend, and Ronnie is giving an Academy Award-winning performance. He's crying. He's telling you know, the grandparents get there, and it was Rocco Defeo, his granduncle, who was really in charge, not Michael Briganti. And as I said, they closed ranks, but it took the cops about 36 hours to get a confession. But in that 36 hours, Ronnie was spinning tales of mafia hits, organized crime.
It was easy.
He even named the person he said he thought did it. And the guy got wind of it and showed up. Actually, the person in question had been in Pennsylvania at the time, and had a beef with them.
One hell of an alibi.
Yes, well, he also came to the cops and said, "Hey, you want to talk to me? Here's where I am," and everything checked out. So, but he was making up, each of these stories was more far-fetched, and his alibis they had holes in them that you could drive a convoy through, essentially. So after 36 hours, the one cop worked on him for about 10 hours straight, and that's when he finally caved. But
that's a long time.
Yes. Well, after they weren't questioning him for 36 hours straight for the first day.
No, I know, but to be in an interrogation room, even, that's a long time.
They had him originally in protective custody because he was telling them
they thought
his life was in danger.
And we learned a lot from stuff like that. Yeah.
When he confessed to the detective, then he switched gears and he says, he was worried about his grandfather. He says, because he has all the cops in his pockets. I could get killed in jail. I could get poisoned. So
wow.
there was a real religious element there, because in fact the Defeos did have mass said in their house.
Yes.
The story that went around was that all the windows were closed, and yet a wind came up and blew the candles out.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for Italian, Catholics to have a mass in their home to bless the host.
I would say it wasn't a rarity, but it was a little bit uncommon. We never did it in my house. I mean, I'm Italian and Irish, and that's a real Catholic combo there. But yeah, to your point, but certainly after Ronnie Sr. was almost killed the first time by Butch, it's inexplicable to me. It just defies explanation that he ended up giving him the guns back. Why would you do that? And they're still spoiling him, and he's still living, at home. Something was always going to give there. But then again, you have William Weber coming into the thing and seeing he was knocking down opportunity's door. He wasn't waiting for it to invite him in. And then the Lutzes show up. So a lot of people think, wow, it was all a hoax. Except, again, the one thing that never made sense to me vis-a-vis the Lutzes was, up until this time, everything about George Lutz and Kathy Connor Quarantino Lutz screams normal suburban people. George had been an ex-Marine. He was making a good living. A lot of people came out and said, oh, they couldn't afford that house, so that's why they did it. They couldn't afford the mortgage payment. That made no sense either. Because in fact, they hadn't been in there they were in there for 28 days. You don't make your first mortgage payment for almost 60 days.
Right.
After you've moved in.
Plus they got the house at a really discounted price, right?
That's
yes.
right.
The other thing that happened was that George was planning to get rid of his office, and he was going to have have the William Parry Surveying Company offices in the basement of the house to save money. And at that point, Long Island was in a nice boom for development.
Right.
So there would have been a lot for his.
They had a plan, essentially.
Yes, but they weren't in there long enough to run up
Right.
any bills.
Yeah,
Big
right.
heating bills, none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there was nothing about them that screamed con artists.
Mm-hmm.
You don't suddenly wake up one day at the age of 29 or 30 and say, I'm going to start robbing banks. You know what I'm saying? They were just
Yes.
normal people. They did not have criminal records. There was nothing for shoplifting, petty
Mhm.
larceny. They hadn't, had the cars towed away because we checked on that.
Right.
But George was kind of cagey. And then, of course, there was the striking resemblance at first with the beard and the hairstyle between George and Ronnie DeFeo Jr., which a lot of people seized on at the time.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
Mm.
But through it all, you have William Weber, and then when he got dumped by the Lutzes, that's when, and I spent that 5.5 hours with George and Kathy that Saturday. They said, okay, we're going to give you the exclusive story. So I go marching back into the station on Monday morning, said, I got it. And it was like, okay, you have to do this. So then it was do what I said I was going to do, which is find a paranormal investigator.
Mhm.
And the first person I called, because I had interviewed him before and gone on a couple of cases with him, was Hans Holzer, who astoundingly had not heard about the story.
Crazy.
And I remember talking to Hans, and Hans was a very efficient investigator.
Yes.
Mhm.
He was
Yes.
also very good. He was also a very savvy businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that as a compliment. Back in 1968, so you figure just 8 years earlier, he had done a documentary for Channel 5 at this place, the Cafe Bazaar, which was a discotheque. It was the former stables of Vice President Aaron Burr, who had been in a duel with Alexander Hamilton. And this place was now a discotheque, and people, you have to figure Greenwich Village in the late 60s, all the hippies. There was a lot of velvet, psychedelic stuff, and people would be on the dance floor,
Mm-hmm.
toking up,
That was the spot.
drinking, and all of a sudden they turned around and they saw a man in different garb with, ruffled shirt, looking at them, and they turned back and the person would disappear. So he had done this hour-long documentary that got great ratings. So when I called him and said, can you come, told him about the Amityville house, he says to me, oh, that just sounds like a simple haunting. And I said,
Simple.
okay, but can you come out there with us tomorrow? He says, oh, no. We need to do this the right way, put money behind it.
Mm.
And do an hour-long documentary like we did. I said, well, yeah, but we're not the entertainment division. This is the news division here at Channel 5.
Right.
We don't have any money. We're the cheap. Well, no, I'm not going to do it. So Steve Bauman, who was the Emmy Award-winning investigative reporter for Channel 5, came over, and he gets on the phone with Hans and is standing and spends 10 minutes trying to convince Hans to come out with us to do the story.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't. Steve says, okay, thank you. Hangs up the phone. He goes, well, now, Laura, you have to find somebody else.
Do you think Hans ever regretted that decision in lieu of like everything that surrounds the Amityville horror case and potential hauntings? Like, did he ever reach out to you and say, I wish I'd have done it, or did he ever surface to try to get involved again?
Oh, of course he did.
Okay, good.
I think he kicked when the story
okay.
blew up. I think
Yeah.
he kicked himself for 10 minutes. Then he sprung into action and reached out to William Weber.
Right.
And Hans called me back later that year. Okay. And said, oh, he was doing a book, and could I meet him out at the Amityville House? Because he was going to go out with Ethel Johnson Myers.
Phenomenal.
And the deep trance medium that he worked with. And he wanted me to help out, and he wanted me to do some research because I had done all the research on the original thing and all the history of the house and et cetera, and the Indians that, the Native Americans that were living there.
Right.
The Shinnecox, the Montaukets, the different tribes. So when I got, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here.
Okay.
January 1977, I meet him out at the house, which is now empty because the Lutzes had moved out the year before, let the banks, they had an auction for their stuff, moved to California, let the bank take it. And who's there for this seance? William Weber. Who's standing there talking to Hans. I'm like, what is he doing there? Hans never mentioned anything about him. But no, at the time, here's the thing. Let's put this in perspective. Hans was not unreasonable. In fact, it was very smart for Hans to say, let's do this the right way. Put some money behind it and do a whole documentary. But that's not what the news division wanted. The news division saying, hey, this is happening now.
Yeah.
We're all about live action and, seize the moment.
Yeah, getting it first.
And if there was no money in there for him, Hans wasn't going to do it. Again, that's perfectly reasonable. It was also perfectly short-sighted, but at this point, nobody knew it was going to blow up the way it did. It could just be a story that was here today, gone tomorrow, which is, do you remember what was in the news last week?
Sure.
No.
Right.
Most of us don't. And that's in a news cycle which was much more leisurely paced than what we have in 2024. So then I said, okay, who's next on the list? So Marvin Scott was there. He says, well, why don't you call Ed and Lorraine Warren? Because we had done stories with them before. There was a haunted church in New Jersey. Another person that we considered was Dorothy Allison, who had worked with many police departments and law enforcement agencies around the country to help them solve cases. But I called up Ed and Lorraine, and I had also interviewed them for my radio show that I had when I was at Fordham University, WFUV. And so I knew them. I said, okay, so let's call them. And I got Lorraine. Lorraine answered the phone right away. And I asked her, have you heard about the Amityville? What's going on? No, that she'd never heard about it. And she called to Ed and said, Ed, get on the extension phone. Now, Amelia, just as you were saying at the beginning of the conversation, 20-year-old hadn't heard of this stuff. So this is ancient technology. They wouldn't know extension phone.
That's right.
No.
So I basically gave them the highlights of the story. Family of 6, brutally murdered. The oldest son convicted. A lot of strange things about that case, etc. Another family moves in and out within 28 days, claiming unseen forces. And so I said, can you come down and go in there with us, myself and Steve Bauman? Okay, when? How about tomorrow? And Lorraine said, yes. And Lorraine was such a lovely lady. She says to me, Laura, do you think it would be possible for Channel 5 to pay for our gas and tolls? That's all.
Modest.
That's all.
Yeah.
That is all. I said, yes, we will do that. Having no confidence that the station would do it, but no. I knew that they would
she had
spring
quite
for
a
that.
drive. She had quite a drive too.
Yes, you're talking, they had at least a 2-hour drive because at the time, coming from Connecticut down to New York, there were toll booths for 25 cents every few miles, and it would back up traffic. It wasn't the 25 cents that got you. It was the traffic backup because you had to throw the money into the basket. Again, something that you don't see anymore these days.
No,
now
Pittsburgh, you're stopping every freaking 5 minutes.
Yes.
In Pittsburgh. Yeah.
But my point was, they listened to the story. They asked questions. They said they would do it. They did not ask for any money.
No.
So for all the criticism that the Warrens come under by cynics and people who claim that they're fraudsters, I never knew Ed and Lorraine Warren to ask for money up front, charge for their services. They always, whether or not you believe they were frauds, they were well-intentioned but really didn't have any talent, or whether or not you believe, hey, they're the real deal, they were genuine people. They came from a place where they genuinely wanted to help.
Yeah.
I knew Lorraine. Yeah.
Yes. And what you know
lovely.
about Lorraine, and if anybody who's seen the movies, The Conjuring, etc., you know that Vera Farmiga, I have to give her a lot of credit, the actress who portrayed Lorraine in the Conjuring
she's
movies.
Great, Vera. Yeah.
She nailed Lorraine's personality.
Yeah. She's a fabulous actress. She was a smart choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Patrick Wilson, who's also a good actor, he was a bit more gentle and, say, laid back than Ed was in real life. But he didn't.
Yeah.
Yes. But Patrick Wilson never had the opportunity to meet Ed.
True.
Because Ed had passed away in 2006. But so Lorraine was a lovely, lovely person. And both she and Ed were devout Catholics. They were very spiritual. And that was Lorraine's faith, that was no joke. That was no pretense.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they came down, and the next day we went in there with Steve Bauman. And there's always some funny things that happen during these things. Steve Bauman was Jewish, and we were sitting in the car. Well, let me back up for a second. There was a lot of confusion around meeting George Lutz to give us the keys to get into the house. And George wasn't where he was supposed to be. So Lorraine and I, it was a rainy, chilly night. Lorraine and I are trying to phone him. And we're in this phone booth. Again, go watch an old Superman movie, folks. If you're, if you're under 40.
Well, they watch Doctor Who, so I guess they get the gist of it, right?
Yeah. And Lorraine and I are trying to use this phone booth, and all we're getting is crackling on the line, nothing. And somebody, invariably, somebody would come by, again, this is before mobile phones, and bang on the door to use the phone booth, and we would get out, and I'd say, the phone isn't working, because we kept trying to drop money in there. That happened 3 times. Every time we got out to let somebody else use it and we were telling them it wasn't working, the phone worked perfectly for the other people.
Yeah.
And
Funny
I
that.
said to Lorraine, what the heck is this? Because and we weren't just trying to call George's number. We were trying to call, we ended up, it was unbelievable. We looked like liars to these people.
Mhm.
But I said, Lorraine, what is going on? And she said, it's diabolical interference. This is just normal.
Yeah.
I said, normal for you, maybe. So finally, what happened was we ended up calling the Amityville Police Department because we knew that they were in touch with the Lutzes because they were watching the house. Because as soon as, by the way, that press conference had happened with Weber and the Lutzes, next thing you know, people are coming by to take pictures, coming up the river on a boat, trying to get in. So then they started, it wasn't just carloads of people. Then it was busloads.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
So at
Yeah.
that point, I said, hey, can you please call the chief? He's got George Lutz's number. No, he's at home having dinner. So Lorraine and I actually went down to the police station and harangued the poor desk sergeant, who finally called the police chief, Camerata, and he gave us George's number. And because we were supposed to be meeting him at the pizza shop, George hadn't shown up, and it was a comedy of errors. Finally, we get back in the car. George says, okay, I'll meet you down there. We did make contact. I'll meet you at the house. As we're sitting in the car, Lorraine is in the front seat, and she turns around and she said to Steve Bauman, who's, by the way, is an investigative reporter. He was covering riots, demonstrations, and college. Channel 5 News at that point was a very gritty shop, known for covering a lot of blue collar stuff, crime, corruption. That's what Steve did. And almost all the reporters were carrying guns, were licensed to carry guns. Steve had a gun that he wore around his ankle, and he would wade right into a crowd. He was fearless. So I'm sitting next to him, and I'm all of, 20, whatever. And this person was my mentor and my idol. And Steve is about 35 at the time. And Lorraine turns around, and in this very sweet voice, she says, now, Steve, I think we should just all take a minute to meditate, clear our heads. But she says, would you like? And she wants to give him a holy card and a crucifix. And I'm thinking, Steve is Jewish. He doesn't want this. And Steve reaches over me, snatches it out of Lorraine's hand and says, can't hurt. And I was like,
was he scared, or he was just being polite?
No, he wasn't just being polite. I think it's one thing to be a hard-nosed reporter. It's one thing to be cynical from afar. But when you're actually at that moment, okay, you don't know what to expect because it is the unknown.
100%.
So even if you are a skeptic, a non-believer, you don't think there's any such thing as ghosts, demons, there's that 1% rule. Well, I'm not quite sure, so I'll hedge my bets. And I remember Lorraine saying to me, Laura, do you need anything? So, no, I already have my scapulars and I already had all of my sacramentals armed with the ready. But when you go in there like that, at the time, look, let's face it, you're 20 years old. If you're a teenager, you're in your 20s, you think that you're indestructible. You're invulnerable.
Oh, true.
Sorry.
It's excitement tinged with a little bit of trepidation, like what's going to happen. But it's not like I'm going into an abandoned house at the end of a dark road on a dark and stormy night. I'm going in with people. The lights are going to work. I'm not going to be by. Yes. So we get out of the car, but I had to laugh I couldn't believe the way Steve had snatched that from him. We get out of the car, we meet George. He's on the front lawn. Steve tries mightily to persuade George Lutz, come into the house with us. George says, I am not going into that house. I'm getting sick just standing here.
Wow. Wow.
So George departs. We go into the house and we're filming, getting the impressions, and we were following Ed and Lorraine around. And Ed was asking Lorraine, okay, what do you feel here? What do you feel there in this room? And by the way, the Lutzes had, the Warrens rather, had not seen any pictures of the house. So, or the inside of it. And of course they lived in Connecticut. So they wouldn't have seen any of those photos. And in fact, most of the bloodiest photos, the crime scene photos, you can find them now on the internet. But at the time, they were not released to the press. Most of the photos that were in the press were of Ronnie Defeo being let out in handcuffs.
Yeah, the traditional ones.
The traditional
the
arrest.
cops. Yeah, the cops on the front lawn.
Yes.
The ambulance there taking the bodies out, but they were in bags, so you couldn't really see anything.
No,
But
and
there
the
were not
High Hope
pictures.
sign made it everywhere. And then
Exactly.
later you saw the one of the children's beds with the blood on it. That came later. And it's, but again, it's the times. Now it'd probably be more horrific with a warning before they showed it.
Yeah.
It's
Graphic,
a different
warning,
time.
graphic content.
Yeah.
But they
different time.
would not hesitate to show it.
No.
And you'd have videos and it would be all over TikTok with music cue.
The way it is now.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, the way it is now.
But what stood out to me, the highlights of that first visit through the, walk through the house, Lorraine went into the master bedroom and she said she could basically see the blood on the bed. And of course there was no blood.
No, which is clairvoyant.
Yeah, well, she could see that, and she's walking around and there was only one room where she felt semi-normal. But when she got to the one spot on the stairway at the top of the first landing, she started to feel ill and have a headache. But she could feel, I think she felt the heaviness, the weight of what had happened. We went up to the third floor and I was behind her and the cameraman was off to the side and you had the light. There was a 3-man crew, cameraman, the electrician who did the lighting, and the sound guy. Nowadays, one guy does everything, the reporter.
Right.
Yeah. And your iPhone.
So we get to what had been Butch DeFeo's room. She didn't know that though.
Yeah.
All of a sudden she stops short at the threshold. Stopped short, and I did one of those things. I almost bumped into her. She says, I can't go in here. I cannot go in here. She says, I just really feel it's very oppressive. I just feel pure evil. And there's a picture of Lorraine, and I remember she actually sat down on the staircase for a while. She, had a headache. She wasn't feeling well. So she and Ed, after we finished, wrapped up for the night, what had been decided was we would go in and do a seance to cleanse the house. They did not call it an exorcism per se. But Ed and Lorraine drove home that night back to Connecticut, and they swore that something followed them.
Lorraine said to me one time, she said, that house tried to kill us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way she felt. And by the way,
Yes.
once again,
Yeah.
I was on the phone with Lorraine over the years because we were friends and stayed in touch.
Mhm.
And I said to her, it was a couple of years before she passed, Lorraine, what was the scariest case you worked on? And I always thought she was going to say the Enfield poltergeist, the Conjuring House, which is a scary house because it looks more like what your perception of a person's perception of a traditional haunted house would look like. And she says Amityville. She always said that famous quote, that was as close to hell as I ever want to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, after all these years, that's still scary. That she says, yeah, Laura, the time I was in there, that was it. And I mean, she was, living with Annabelle and the Haunted Museum there.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Annabelle was not always in a glass case.
No. That comes out in the movie a couple of times. I have one of her books, and in it, she says that she felt the grace of St. Pio when she walked in. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was an investigation or later with the seance when she came in that time.
At the seance, or?
She saw a full apparition of St. Pio.
Padre Pio, you're talking about.
Yeah, he's sainted
monk,
now.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I know he's a saint, but at the time.
Well, he was still Padre Pio at the time because he was still alive. No.
Yeah, he was still.
He was still alive, and yet she saw him. Wow.
Well, that can happen.
I know. I didn't even click to me until you said it. I'm like, wait, he passed away. Oh, no. He passed away in 86 or 68. I think it was 68. So 68. He would have, then he would have been gone by then.
But she was a great devotee of Padre Pio.
Yeah, me too.
And she had a lot of she had some relics from him and sacramentals, etc. But my point was, in talking to her, just like in talking to Kathy Lutz, in talking to Danny and Christopher, the stories didn't waver. Kathy always said, people don't believe me. I know what happened there. And Kathy was, after she and George got divorced, I mean, she went back to just living a life, and she was delivering Meals on Wheels. She was a lovely person.
Yeah.
So I don't think she would have gone to her death without confessing if it had been a thing. Somebody's asking me a question. Yeah. The speckled egg. Laura, did I feel anything myself?
Yes.
Okay, so now I always get asked this. I mean, I have to tell you, when we get to the seance, I'm in this house. It's lit from top to bottom, from basement to the third floor attic. And things started to happen that night. You didn't see a lot on camera. So the short answer to the speckled eggs question, did I feel anything myself? No. I felt like I might as well have been a pet rock. And in fact, I said, boy, I guess I'm not even worth haunting, because we go in the night of the seance. And by the way, this was a comedy of errors. Nobody was in charge. Okay. Steve Bauman got out of he was supposed to be doing the story that night with me. And instead, he decides at the last minute he's going to fly off for a Caribbean vacation with his wife, Bonnie, for the weekend.
Oh, gosh, which would I choose?
No, he just decided it on the spur of the moment.
Oh.
I never got the answer out of him of why he did it. Maybe did he not want to do the story? And that was his way of getting out? Was he afraid? I don't know. Did he just really need a vacation? I have no clue.
Wow.
But I called the station that afternoon, and I said I was asking for Steve Bauman, and they said to me, Steve isn't here. I said, what do you mean he isn't there? He's meeting me out on Long Island at 6:00 tonight to do this story. No, he's not there. He's gone. Gone where? he's what? They said, oh, Marvin Scott's doing that. And I hear Marvin Scott in the background say, is that Laura? And Marvin gets on the phone with me and he's panicked because he's just had this story dumped on him. And understand something.
Yeah.
That nobody in the Channel 5 really wanted to do the story. The reporters thought they were going to be tainted by doing it. It was myself and Mark Monsky, the news director, who said, this is a great story.
Because it was a horror. So that's why they felt they would be tainted by it, their reputation.
A lot of them didn't. A lot of them thought it was hocus pocus and that they were serious reporters and didn't want to be bothered. But yet, so Marvin gets on the phone with me and said, you have to brief me on this. He was supposed to have been anchoring the evening news that night. And they had to get somebody to replace him. And I had to give him the whole background of the story. And he was livid because it was dumped in his lap at the last minute. And why am I getting stuck doing this? But once he got out there, he's, he was a total professional. But he didn't get there until a bit later. So I show up at 6:30. And this is March 6th. It's a Saturday night. And I had to leave. It was my mom's birthday. So I had to leave the party. So it's dark. And I go, the house, you go in through the side door on the side of the house. And it had the window on either side of the door. And I'm just about to put the key in the door and the house was lit up. And all of a sudden I look up and I see this man's face. It looked like Christopher Lee, the actor, who had played Dracula. And he was also in the Lord of the Rings movies as Saruman.
Yes.
I see this guy, he's got a hawk nose and he's got dark hair, dark eyes. It looked like a vampire. I almost jumped off the doorstep. What I didn't know, and the whole thing was sort of a mishmash.
Yeah, the whole feariness of it.
Well, what had happened, besides that, what I didn't know was that George Lutz had invited a bunch of investigators to it. The Warrens had also invited several of their friends who were investigators. Alberta Riley and her husband, Brian. Mary Pascarella. They had brought their cameraman, Gene Campbell. They had brought one of the researchers who worked with them, Paul Bartz.
Why so many people? Does that not take away the effectiveness of a clearing?
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I couldn't investigate a house, which I've done many, many, many investigations. Less is best,
That's a lot of noise to rule out.
Well, not only that, so
Energy.
Then George was trying to get buy-in, I think, from a lot of paranormal investigators so that they would say, yes, this is real. So he had called this other group that had been loosely, and I underscore the word loosely, affiliated with Duke University School of Parapsychology. Okay, but it wasn't. They weren't with that. It was sort of more like a Ghostbusters thing.
Oh, geez.
This group had the Dream Lab, so it was. Yeah.
Well, they just had the Dream Night with Ed and Lorraine.
So they had George Lutz had invited this people, and then the other guy, Jerry, had brought along two grad student researchers who acted like they were about 8 years old and had just walked off the set of Animal House.
Great.
So there were 23 people in the house that night. Then there was, we had Mike Linder from WNEW, our sister radio station, was also there, and he was a skeptic. So you walk into this and the house is just teeming with people. But guess what? Nobody was in charge, not even nominally. Channel 5 is waiting to get the story and have the seance, which was supposed to be the linchpin of the evening.
Mm-hmm.
But today, you would have 4 or 5 people in there, and you'd have all this scripted. This one's going to go here. This one's going to go there. We're going to do this at 8 o'clock, this at 9 o'clock. We're going to set you up with your equipment in the basement. Somebody else is going to go to the living room,
Right.
whatever. None of that was there. So we got into the house that night, and our cameraman we had 3 guys, sound man, electrician, and the cameraman. And Steve Petropoulos, the cameraman, very fit guy. He was and you had to be fit to be a cameraman in those days in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Those cameras were heavy.
The equipment was bulkier. Yeah. It was heavier.
Mm.
And Steve used to run. He was a runner. So he was about, I guess, 5'9", 5'10", maybe about 150 pounds tops. Slim guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him going up the center staircase, and he is halfway up, and he just had his light meter. He didn't have any equipment. And he turns around and he says to me, and he had this strange look on his face. And he says, "There's a room on the 2nd floor, 2nd door on the left. And one wall is filled with mirrors." And he says, "And I don't know how I know that." Now, again, he had never seen the inside of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So he was puzzled that he had this sort of, I guess, for lack of a better word, just psychic flash. I knew what he was referring to. And that was the master bedroom that had belonged to Ronnie and Louise Defeo.
Mm-hmm.
And on one wall, right behind the bed, it had those 12 by 12 mirror panels that you'd see in a Vegas,
yes,
old style Vegas hotel room.
Yes.
Right. So at that point, Steve continues up the stairs at a leisurely pace. He gets to the 2nd floor landing, which is exactly where Lorraine had felt ill when we had been in the house 2 weeks before.
Mm.
He turns around, and I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs along with the other 2 crew members.
Mm.
And he looks, and I just watched his face goes ashen. He doubles over, clutching his chest.
Oh.
And not faking. His face was, if this was a novel, I would say his face was contorted with pain. So the other 2 guys on the crew, Richie and Tommy, run up the stairs, help him down. And at this point, he's breaking out. He's broken out into a sweat. We sit him on the bottom step, and we're giving him water. And Steve, are you okay? After a few minutes had passed, and he was okay, but he had severe heart palpitations. He said, all of a sudden, I just felt something on my chest. He couldn't breathe, and heart palpitations. He said he thought his heart was going to pop out of his chest.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to the seance, and Alberta Riley, in the middle of the seance, screams and says, "It's upstairs, it's moving. It's in the 2nd floor bedroom." Next thing, a few minutes later, I was sitting between Marvin Scott on my right, and I have Mike Linder on my left, two big skeptics, and both Scorpios, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, Marvin leans over and says to me, "Hey, I just felt a chill." I didn't feel anything. 5 minutes after that, Mike Linder leans over and says to me, "Hey, I just felt a chill." The next thing that happens, as Lorraine is in her light trance, and she comes out and she says, "I felt that whatever was possessing this house, it's not a ghost, it's something demonic from the bowels of the earth," was what she said. And she felt that there was going to be a priest that would come along to cleanse it. He would be the one that would rid the house of the evil and the darkness. Then the next thing I know, Mary Pascarella runs out of the dining room where the seance is being held and runs out onto the side lawn, and she was nauseous. So I didn't feel a thing. I didn't feel a chill. I didn't feel a tingle in my spine. Mm-hmm. But these things were happening all around me. At that point, when the seance was over, okay, what's everybody going to do? So Ed was very vexed with this, Jerry Sulfan from the Dream Lab, not with Jerry, but with the two guys that were with him. Because they were saying to Ed, "Have you ever seen a ghost?" Again, they were so dumb. So Ed says, "Go down in the basement, hang out down there." But there was too much going on.
Yeah, too many
Somebody
people.
Broke into the liquor cabinet.
Of course.
Okay.
You got almost 25 people in the house.
I know. So at this point,
martini and a seance, right?
The thing that was scaring Marvin the most was that we were going to have no story, that it was going to look like Geraldo Rivera opening Al Capone's vault and the emperor has no clothes, and that we were going to bomb, and that Marvin and I were going to get tagged for the fact that nothing supernatural happened, and that no ghosts or whatever you want to say had showed up. So Marvin says to me, he says, "That station," he says, "Monsky will devote a lot of time to this, but I don't think we've got it." And I knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
So we took Lorraine upstairs into the sewing room to do another sort of pass about things. And she gave her impressions, but it looked like what it was. 3 people sitting around in a dark room in front of a candle. Wasn't necessarily, and if you're looking at it from a perspective of expecting The Exorcist or Poltergeist, with things flying around the room, a portal opening to another dimension, somebody getting sucked into.
Right. It wasn't happening that night. Right.
But it's inaccurate to say that nothing happened, because those things did happen. So we got back to the station, and we filmed it was a 2-part series. And I think the first part ran for about 3.5 minutes, which that's a long, the normal story, television story lasts about a minute and a half.
Right.
And we didn't Marvin did not embellish anything. He just said, "Well, we didn't see anything show up," or what have you. Well, the phones were ringing off the hook each night, and people wanted to say, "When are we going to do more?" And I will never forget Mark Monsky, who was such a news hound, and he was an exceptional news director, standing in the middle of the newsroom saying, "We have to find another haunted place." He says, "We've done this house to death. We've now had it on the air 3 times. People are sick of it. It's not going anywhere." And it's like saying TV was never going to supplant radio.
Right.
But for months afterwards, 6 or 8 months afterwards, we were still getting calls from people wanting to know more about the house. And then I went back in with Hans Holzer and Ethel Johnson Myers And she was a deep trance medium.
Mm.
Lorraine was a light trance medium, which meant she closed her eyes, tuned in to whatever channel or channels she was getting.
But she wasn't being channeled like.
Exactly. And she was
Yes.
aware of her surroundings, whereas
Yes.
Ethel had her spirit guide.
Mm-hmm.
And the amazing thing about that, when you saw Ethel, who was she had to be in her 70s then, you know, in the high top shoes.
Mm-hmm.
She had been a former opera singer.
Wow.
And she had gotten that there was, and I had told Hans about this and also the Warrens, that this, you know, there were Native Americans' bodies that had been found there. It was not a Native American burial ground per se, like what you and I would think of as a central cemetery, but the Native Americans were all over Long Island, obviously, and you're going to live by the water because it's your mode of transportation. It's a food source. It's a source of drink, conveyance, etc. So, and they had dug up while they were digging for a root cellar back in 1895.
Wow.
They found 4 bodies there, and I had actually, when I did the original research, right after the press conference with Weber and the Lutzes, I had gone to the Amityville Historical Society and found the stories from the Rockville Center Gazette, the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, on 2 separate occasions that they had found 4 bodies there, including what they thought was the body of a chief, because he was found in an upright position. And the bones were in pretty good shape. Well, 2 weeks later, I went back to make some photocopies, and those stories, all mention of that had disappeared.
Oh, come on.
And no, I'm not kidding. And for years, for decades, the Amityville Historical Society disputed and denied that such a find had ever been made. Of course, there is such things as microfiche, so certainly it has resurfaced, and I have those clippings now.
Good.
Right.
But so when Ethel Johnson was there with Hans and he was taking her through the thing, all of a sudden I saw this little old lady transform, and all of a sudden she had a great big Adam's apple there on her neck. And the voice came through of a Native American person who said he was very upset because some kids had found his skull, the skeletal remains of his skull, and were kicking it around like a football. So, and that upset him. So we did that with Hans, and then Hans wrote a book, Murder in Amityville. Hans had hooked up with and made some type of a deal with William Weber, and I was never privy to the particulars of that, and I didn't ask, so that he could get access to Ronnie Defeo.
Oh.
And he had actually gone up and interviewed Ronnie, and that's when, and Ronnie was going to tell Hans what he thought Hans wanted to hear. That stuff went on, and then Ronnie would spend the next, until he died 3 years ago, just making up whatever story he could. He changed his story so many times. I don't think he even, I question whether or not he even remembered the truth. He always denied that he killed his siblings. He only admitted to killing the father, but he was trying to place the blame on Dawn, you name it, still.
Wow.
So
there's so much more. I know. From before, and we're already past the top of the hour, and God, I mean, we could be another 2 hours just to cover everything.
Well,
What
tell me what you would like me to hear. Ask me questions because I
would
could talk about this stuff. I have,
I
all
know.
these years of collected.
Oh no, what I would like to do, because I would like to get everything out, is see if you could come back in October.
Yes.
We have a couple of dates left to do part 2, and then we can add, finish it off and do like a Q&A, because there, like, I remember our conversations and the original interviews, and I know how much more there is, and even then we ran out of time, so I know
Yeah.
we would have even more to talk
I
about.
have to tell you something. I never, for the people who say, did I feel anything? Did I experience anything?
Yeah.
I went back into the house 2 weeks later because I was very curious. I needed to I was walking around with the Lutz's house keys. They weren't going back to the house, but 2 weeks after the seance, I wanted to go back into the house by myself while the house was quiet. I had the same idea that you did, which is with so much going on. And so did Ed Warren, by the way. Ed Warren called a halt to everything at about 4 a.m.
Right.
Okay. Because he says, we're not going to get anything done. The house is, it's not going to be quiet.
No.
Yeah.
So
not with that many people.
I don't know why we didn't opt to go back in again with the Warrens a third time with just them. But I wanted to go back in by myself, being the nosy, inquisitive budding reporter I was. Only I said, okay, so I was going out to give the Lutzes back their house keys. It was on a Saturday afternoon early. I said, I'm going to stop at the house. I'm going to bring my dog Fritz with me, who was a Shepherd Labrador mix. He looked like a shepherd. And if this dog were alive today, he would be one of those dogs, I'm convinced, that, like a golden retriever or a Labrador, could sense heart attacks or seizures, one of those. He was sort of an empath. I wasn't going to be stupid enough. You know how you always see the old horror movies from the 50s and 60s, or even the 40s, where the damsel in distress goes running through the woods.
Yeah. First the basement.
Yeah.
First the basement.
Or decides she's going to go to try and kill the vampire at sundown, just before sundown. Duh. I said, well, I'm going in. If there's anything here, I'm going in at high noon with my German Shepherd for protection, because he's a big dog. He's 120 pounds, big German Shepherd. So, and nobody, I'm not really supposed to be there. So I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. And again, no cell phones, no nothing. And so I let Fritz wander around. I'm just walking around the house, and everything was as the way the Lutzes left it. The gingerbread house that Kathy had made for her kids at Christmas was still there, getting, on the dining room table. The clothes were still around, all of the furniture was as it was. And I'm walking around downstairs. I don't hear anything. I don't feel creepy. The hairs aren't standing up, and it's just a sort of nice house. And I'm looking out at the water, and okay, I'm waiting to feel something. And then I hear Fritz, who was still in the foyer. I hear him growling. So I walk back out, because I was sort of towards the back of the house, like by what was the sunroom and things like this. And there's my dog, who was a very calm dog. And he was, this dog is used to New York City and, lots of things. He's not rattled.
No, he's used to the noise.
Yeah, he's used to people. He's used to a lot of things happening. And there's my dog standing at the base of the stair, staring. my dog is stock still, and he's staring at a fixed point at the second floor landing.
Again.
The
Yeah.
same spot where our cameraman had the heart palpitations, where Lorraine had been feeling ill, and the hackles were up from his neck to his tailbone.
Ooh.
And he's not moving. And he's just growling, and he's looking at something. And now that creeped me out. At that point, I'm starting to say, because, animals can sense things that we can't. I couldn't hear anything. So somebody listening might say, well, maybe it was squirrels in the attic. Maybe somebody was in the house. But no, if it had been a live body other than me, that dog would have charged up there. Because I remember the time my grandmother lived in a 2-family house on the second floor, and her landlord had the first floor apartment, and his son came over to visit him one day, and the son had grown a beard and came in the front door, and Fritz was upstairs with me, and he saw him coming in, and that dog charged down the stairs because he thought that the dog was and he thought that the man was an intruder, and he was going to get him. And that dog was normally friendly. So the fact that my dog, if it had been a squirrel or a cat, something that had gotten into the house, he would have gone up there. But the fact that he was standing stock still, that to me was
Caution.
scary. So
Yes.
I started to go up the stairs. And then I got midway up the steps, and I said, Laura, what I really felt deep down in my gut was, whatever is here, it's not interested in you. So don't go bothering it. I don't think it's a good idea.
Don't make it take an interest in you.
Yes.
No.
I don't think it's a
give
good
it a
idea.
reason.
Nobody wants that.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, well, call me yellow. I'm getting out of here at that point.
Yes.
And I didn't tell anybody what I had done for years after.
You could paint me yellow. I wouldn't stay. That's not something you want to play with when you're by yourself.
Well, no, but I tell you, whatever happened in there, and by the way, another little anecdote, which I can go into more on part 2, but I'll just tell you this really quickly now, is I have talked, everybody likes to say that, the Lutzes must have made it up because nothing else ever happened to anybody who's lived there subsequently. That's not true. There have been several instances, and I talked to one of the former owners who was a skeptic. She and her husband were there, and they were quoted in the New York Times and many other places saying, it's a tired old ghost story. It's all BS. So when I was talking to this person a few years back, trying to get permission to go in again with psychic for another television show, or documentary, which did not happen. I said, we thought we'd like to take Danny Lutz in there to see what his impressions are decades later. I said the name Danny Lutz, and all of a sudden, this person who was the owner at the time of the house, who had been poo-pooing the notion, she said it was all made up. It's like watching somebody turn on a dime and say, Danny Lutz, that little blah, 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 and the string of expletives followed. He's the reason. He and George, they're the ones that brought the darkness into this house. I would never let Danny Lutz in here again.
What darkness? Right?
Well,
interesting.
The person went from saying it's a tired old ghost story and it's all made up for Hollywood
Right.
to, I'd never let this person in here.
Right.
She just wanted it to be
He's
left
the
alone.
one. It's his fault. Now, whatever you think of Danny, and
He was just a baby.
he was 9 years old.
No,
He didn't bring any darkness in there.
he didn't bring anything in there. It was there.
No,
when
but
they got there.
I do think that there's a correlation between Ronnie Defeo, who drug addict, evil, and people have said, well, I don't know what his psychosis is. I'm not, different psychologists gave their assessment of him at the trial. But it's evil, what he did, pure evil. So even if you don't believe there's anything supernatural, he's evil. And I think you can leaves residue.
It leaves an
like
imprint in time and space, and that just doesn't go away. The impact that it leaves, it's like a ripple effect.
Yes, and then the next thing
bodies,
you have
traumatic death. A lot of bodies.
Yes, less than a year later, the Lutzes move in, and whatever was going on there tapped into George. So there is that connection, a place in time. And it worked on George. And at the end, I don't care, there were definitely things that were exaggerated.
Of course.
By the press, by the Lutzes. But at the end of the day, I think something happened to the Lutzes. You don't just suddenly, go in and
I agree.
Develop a new persona, if you will.
I agree. I think vultures, this vulture kind of got to him and took him into a different direction. And unfortunately, that added to the discredit. And a lot of the, Hollywood is not gentle. Hollywood has creative control. They come in, they make a film, they embellish it, they want the ratings. And in the end, that hurts the true story. That's why they say the documentaries are always more truthful and more interesting than feature films.
Oh, yeah. Haunting of Connecticut is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right? I did a lot of investigations. I did several investigations accompanying the Warrens over the years, and we've remained friends. I didn't talk to Lorraine every week or every day, but very interesting thing. And I think I told you this the last time, but for all the new viewers, back in early May 2006, I was sitting here in my office and I'm writing a report on computer servers. Okay, because I'm in high technology. So that's about as far as away from the supernatural and ghosts you can get. So I'm typing away, and all of a sudden, the thought comes into my head, I have to call Lorraine Warren. And I hadn't talked to Lorraine in about a year. And it wasn't like, oh, here's a picture, or somebody just, I got to call Lorraine sometime. No, I had to call Lorraine right then and there. It was that compelling. So my phone is right here, my fingertips. I picked up the phone. I called Lorraine. She answered. And Ed was ill at this time. He had had a stroke. He was at home. She was taking care of him. And he was, bedridden. Lorraine and I were talking for about 2.5 hours. And how are you doing? What's going on? And she said she could still communicate with Ed, etc. And I said, oh, we'll have to do lunch. I understand you want to stay close to home. I'll come down to you. And we talked about Amityville, of course, and we were going over a few things. We talked about some of the other cases. And I said, how are you doing as, a caretaker? Because, for Ed, because that, I know you love him. That takes a lot out of you. And so it went on for 2.5 hours. I said, okay, you know what? I'll call you next week and I'll drive down. Because she's only about an hour and a half away from me. Okay, great. Later that night, what do I see? But the story is my inbox is filling up with messages, and George Lutz had a heart attack, massive heart attack, and died that day. Now, he was living in Las Vegas, so 3 hours. So while I was on the phone with Lorraine, George was having a heart attack. So I only found out that, and died. So I said, oh my God. So I called Lorraine up the next day and said, Lorraine, I'm sure you've heard about George. I said, you know how I said to you yesterday, you had popped into my head, and I felt compelled to call you at that time. And she says, that was no accident. Yeah, this happens. So I'm not Lorraine. I'm not Vicki Monroe, Dorothy Allison. I'm not the big, but if you hang around with people like this for that long, and I had, I went through some pretty deep experiences with Ed and Lorraine. Somewhere in the universe that just tapped in, but that was one of the most profound things out of that. That was no accident. It was no coincidence, because I felt a real compulsion to pick up the phone, call Lorraine. And I said, we were on the phone chatting at the very time George was having a heart attack and passed away.
Yeah. Eerie.
That's not a coincidence.
No, that's crazy stuff. That's crazy stuff. We definitely have to. I'm going to email you right after the show, because we've only got like 2 or 3 dates left in the whole month. And I'm going to put them by you, and we're going to put together part 2 of this and get into a bit more detail. And we're going to do a full Q&A after that, because a lot of comments and questions have come up, and we will address them upon your next return. Because we did not want to interrupt you. We just wanted to let you just keep going.
It's dangerous, because I can, as you see, I can keep talking.
Oh, but that's okay. That's okay.
I don't know what the part I said, where people get sick of listening to me, and where I'm repeating myself, or becoming boring.
No, we definitely wanted to just hear everything you had to say. And unfortunately, we only have so much time to be able to do the show. So with that being said, I have to sign us off. So everybody who tuned in, thank you so much for joining us with our very special guest and dear friend, Laura DiDio. And big thank you to all of you guys in the chat room. Lots of new faces. Yeah. And thank you, Speckled Egg. You're one of the first is coming in through Rumble. I didn't even know that we could see the chat room from Rumble.
Oh, very cool.
Woohoo! Fantastic, and thank you for joining us. So
I'll be glad to answer any questions that they might have. If you want to send me follow-up questions, I can send some email responses.
We're going to save that for the next show, because we could do like a full-on like Q&A. Like, we'll do that. So put it all together, and we're going to definitely do that. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring the show tonight and every night that we are live. Big thank you to United Public Radio, 105.3, 107.7 FM for being our home. Big thank you to Justin Snicker. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so very much. Okay, next week, Wednesday night, we welcome back Stephen Bissett, UFO disclosure activist. Everybody loves what this guy's got to say, and boy, does he have a lot to say. So we're going to get into a lot of different stuff with that, and he'll talk about, confirming the heads of states and talking about the extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He's going to get into the do's, don'ts. He's going to get into, the implications of disclosure, all kinds of stuff. So you won't want to miss that one. And of course, we're supposed to have Mindy Toutfest, who's going to be talking about her book, Dying to Meet Them. And she is a contactee, and it's going to be exciting. So it's going to be more of a UFO-based, contactee-based week. But anyway, have yourselves a fantastic weekend, you guys, and we shall see you all next week. Good night.